Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the first in the series of 10x webinars. I'm Jim Rogers, I'm Sales Director here at 10x. I've spent over 15 years working in the UK and Ireland bus and coach sector. I've worked with some of the leading providers of on-vehicle telematics and CCTV and several of the largest fleets in the UK and Ireland. I've been lucky enough to do that. I've got a real interest in bringing interoperable, intelligent cloud technology to a market that's crammed with standalone proprietary solutions. And I joined the team back in September 2025 to bring the Northern market leading EV charge management system and platform to the UK and Ireland bus operators with Tenix. I'd like to introduce my co-host, Caroline Kverne, who's based in Oslo. If you'd like to say hello, Caroline.
Hi, everyone. Really pleased to be here, Jim, today and talk a little bit about 10x experiences with charging and smart charging and how we can do it even better.
Brilliant. Thanks, Caroline. So the reason for the webinar is because over the past 6 months of working with 10x, I've seen that there's a lot of confusion around some of the technology in the market. So the topics we wanted to cover today to get some clarity on were load balancing, peak shaving, dynamic charging, and if time's permitting, maybe we'll talk a little bit about schedule integration. But we felt it would be helpful to try and cut through some of the jargon and kind of lean on the learnings from our colleagues in the Nordic market, where electric buses have been running since really 2018. And we want to understand how and share how those technical capabilities of a charge management system really translate into real hard savings and operational benefits. From a 10x perspective, we've got over 2,000 electric buses connected to the platform today, and that number is growing pretty rapidly across, worldwide market and into Europe as well. And guess today I'll take the voice of the operator or the local authority, and just so we can understand more from the Nordic operators and get some feedback from Caroline about how they're operating electric vehicles, electric buses in some of the harshest climates that we see in the world today. We will have some time at the end for some questions, so if you'd be happily pop your questions into the chat, we'll pick those up towards the end of the session. So let's dive into this. So look, there's quite a lot of confusion, Caroline. Operators evaluating charge management system here, the same terms everywhere: load balancing, peak shaving, dynamic charging. I'd like to understand at what point these stop becoming buzzwords and start becoming things you genuinely really need to run the depot. So what's your thoughts on this?
Exactly, Jim. Well, there are a lot of confusion around these terms, and I do understand because they're quite similar in a sense, and it can actually mean the same thing. But it is relevant to consider quite early. I know a lot of operators I talk to have grid constraints. So you have a set of capacity to your depot, but that's not enough. And you need load balancing. So that first step, just having the capacity in and balance the charging, that's load balancing, so that you don't blow the fuse. That's kind of step one. Or if you have trouble going through the day or the night, blowing the fuse, something happens, then you need to go into those smart charging terms. Or, for example, met quite a few operators who have okay size fleet, starting to grow, and then the energy bill gets more expensive. Then I would start thinking about the smart charging terms more. Yes.
Okay. And just for some clarity then, Caroline, what's the difference between peak shaving and dynamic charging? Because to me, they sound very similar.
I agree. So peak shaving is related to load balancing and the capacity of the depot. So if you charge all of your buses at the same time, you will have a peak. And that will be the peak capacity you need in order to charge all the buses at the same time. Um, and that's what's related to the peak side. The dynamic charging, on the other hand, is related to the spot prices. So when you charge on your energy bill, you usually pay for the capacity, and that's related to the peak, and you pay for the spot price, or not. If you have fixed pricing, that's tariff prices, and that's dynamic charging. So when we talk about it in Tenix, we usually try to help operators think, okay, maybe we can go from tariff fixed prices to spot prices as we have in our homes, because it's quite a bit of savings there. So
Okay.
yes, so it's a capacity part and the spot price part.
Okay. So moving on, we touched on load balancing. So load balancing sounds sensible in theory, but not every depot has the same constraints. So in practical terms, when does load balancing become essential rather than an option, in your opinion, and with your experience?
Well, usually we see that there are very local conditions here, but there is some sort of constraint involved, at least when you're scaling your fleets from a couple of vehicles to tens or hundreds of electrical vehicles, then you will have a capacity constraint part of it. So that means that you can't charge all vehicles at the same time with 150 kilowatt, for example. That doesn't work. Then you will blow the fuse. So then you need load balancing. But if you have a couple of vehicles, 5 vehicles maybe, and you don't have that limitation, or you have 1 megawatt connection to your depot, then you don't have a constraint yet. So then you don't need to think about it. But I would really encourage everyone to think about it, because you do pay for your capacity. So you could do load balancing even though you don't have a capacity constraint, because you would like to reduce your peaks and save a bit on the energy bill.
Okay. And just some from the UK market in particular, not so much the Irish market as it's developing further and further as we move along. But I'm hearing lots of operators saying that they're charging the buses to 100% every night. And was this the same in the Nordics in the early days? And has that changed, and why? And has battery health degradation become an issue now in the older buses? Now the bus has been running in the Nordics maybe since 2018.
Yes, to start with the first charging up to 100%, it's pretty normal. I think all bus operators across Europe has the key focus having a reliable fleet operation. So you want to charge to 100% to make sure the bus manage the next route and you have some flexibility in terms of planning. What we see now, some operators are taking the next step, thinking, okay, might not be so smart long term to charge over 80%, for example, to reduce the battery degradation that happens, and also to reduce the costs and free up capacity in the depot. Because quite a few of us struggle to get more capacity into the depot. So if you can reduce what you need, that would be a really key benefit. But it's not like the easy first step to take, to figure out, okay, maybe I can charge up to 80% instead of 100% every single time. It requires that you have a system with visibility into your charging plan and visibility of how much SOC the next bus route needs in order to manage it properly and come back to the depot with the safety margin, because we don't want any traffic stops or reroutes or something to happen and then the bus stops. That shouldn't happen. So we need to have that safety margin. So that's the constraint. But the good part is it's already there, and there's a couple of operators who have started using this and started using AI to think, okay, maybe we can charge up to 63% instead of 100% here on this sunny, nice day and 20-degree. So it's optimal for the bus to drive around. And that's been working really well, and it's very exciting. But I know
Okay.
also quite a few operators focus on 100% in winter time. It's really cold. You need to have the flexibility. There's no way around that. But at least in summer and spring times, try to think a little bit smarter and leverage the options. We've seen quite significant savings, and also the battery degradation side. If you can keep the batteries in the buses for longer, that will be a huge impact on the total cost of ownership analysis.
Okay. Okay. So we talked about peak shaving. So is it a cost control, or is it a nice to have? So energy costs are one of the biggest unknown operators raise with us, as it has a massive effect on the OpEx. How does peak shaving actually reduce the energy bills in real operations, and what kind of savings are you seeing in other regions? And when does an unmanaged, maybe not so smart system start driving up the disproportionate costs?
Exactly. So in the beginning, we usually sit down with our operators to map out, okay, what's the charging profile of the depot? When do we charge? What hours are expensive? What hours are not expensive? And what are our peaks in the length of a month? Because you pay for that one time, you're charging all the buses at the same time and use a lot of capacity. So what we usually find when going through those analyses is that operators have a bit of flexibility of reducing the peaks. And depending on your energy contract, it might be some significant savings there. Because if you can reduce it 10%, then go next week, reduce 10% more, next week 10% more, you know that you will have reliable, stable operations. So you have trust in the system. You can also see longer term that your energy bill is getting lower. Depending a little bit on the setup, it could be that 20% reduction in the peaks goes to a 10% reduction on the energy bill, or it could be that you have a capacity levels. So you want to be below a certain threshold. So that's kind of local setups. It's a bit different everywhere, but I would go check your energy bills, check what kind of capacity you're paying for, and is it possible to pay less or have a different threshold and set that as a target.
Okay, okay. And Caroline, in the Nordic market, who pays for the energy? As I guess it's a challenge here for the combined authorities and maybe the authorities in Ireland, by to see and to be able to manage without having a single system to manage all the operators that may be providing franchise services, look into the depots and monitor the vehicles and maybe even the driving styles. So how do operators, or how do the authorities and operators work together in the Nordics to make sure that the energy is not wasted, and it's the energy because it's extremely precious?
Yeah, well, usually in the Nordics, it's the operators that pay for the energy. But it is in close collaboration, and there's always discussions what level of capacity does this new depots or this old depots need in order to manage the tender setups. So I know that for a fact that's different from the UK market with the franchising models, but it affects everyone. For the operators, that's all about reliability of everything. And I know the authorities want to reduce their energy bills as much as possible because everyone wants to do that. And it's also good for the grid and everything around there that we try to reduce our capacity as much as possible. So to help the electrification overall. So we need to
Okay,
work together to figure out good solutions on that.
okay. So we talked earlier about dynamic charging and peak shaving. So so when this all comes together, you got load balancing, peak shaving, dynamic charging. What are the practical differences operators notice and in the day-to-day running of a depot? And then just to add to that as well, I noticed from the work I've done so far with 10x that schedule integration is really seen as a must-have and a norm in the Nordic market. And I was surprised to see how few operators in the UK in particular, if any, are integrating their schedules into the charge management system. So just
Exactly.
interested to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Well, to go into the smart charging topic and
Hmm.
everything related to it, we have the load balancing and peak shavings. That's one part. Then we go into dynamic charging and charging when the prices are lower, and that's usually in the middle of the night, and sometimes during the day, but that's flexible. Um, but in order for everything to work together, you need to have a schedule integration.
Okay.
As a bus operator, you usually plan the bus routes and plan which bus is going to which route and how that route looks like. That data should be in your charge management system so that you can plan and use smart logic on your charging plan accordingly. So that's not something you have to do. You can use a system that does it for you because it's quite complex and you need to figure out how everything works together. And that's kind of the key thing. In order to make smart charting work, you need to have a smart integration to your scheduling. We know that there will be changes during the day. Sometimes a bus has to go on a different route and you have to make changes. Things happen. And then you need a system that recalculates the charging plan and gives you that information that this bus won't reach the right SOC and how it affects the entire charging plan for your entire fleet. That's the insight you need to have a trusted and reliable operations. So at the one hand, going through all of these smart charging steps with peak shavings, dynamic charging, schedule integrations, charging, that can help you reduce your energy bill up to 30%, 20 to 30%, depending a little bit on your setup. And then it also helps on the reliability of the operations. But that's the other side that we haven't talked that much about, and that's the efficiencies. So there is efficiencies in terms of operational efficiency, people don't having to do the same manual tasks as often, and you can do, for example, fix the handshake, monitor, you get alarms early on. We had this winter incident in Norway a couple of years ago. Actually, it's been quite cold the last couple of months. What happens then is that the charging power goes down, and you need to have a system that recalculates in real time when is the bus expected to reach the correct SOC level to leave for the bus. And if that doesn't match the leave time of the schedule for the bus, then you got a problem. And you need a system that notifies you in advance of those sort of incidents. So that's been kind of the key difference, that you have the insight and ability to plan early on.
Okay. And Caroline, in your view, what two features would you suggest that an operator or a combined authority would introduce from today as a good place to start to make savings? Because it's, to do everything in one go is quite complicated. And I also see in the Nordics that the operators charge their vehicles during the day as well. Seems to be a lot of vehicles on charge during the day, and I don't see as much of that in the UK. And I'm just wondering why you think that is.
Well, to start with charging during the day, that depends a little bit on the operator setup and what routes they're driving, and where the depot is located in terms of doing some in-between charging of different blocks. So usually the operators focus on charging during the night, but sometimes add a couple of day top-ups to manage the routes. So that's for one thing. But the other part of how you can start easily and getting the savings is mapping out how your charging plan looks like. Can we do some easy peak shavings? That's the easiest way. I was started little by little. Don't do a big jump all at once, then you might have a problem. So start easy by easy, getting trust in the system. Then also check, do you have some problems, for example, with reliability of your fleet due to charging issues? Is there cancellations? Is there delays? Do you have trouble with the charger handshake, for example, getting that to work properly? Then you should start there, because that will be significant savings. So
Okay.
not savings in terms of energy efficiency bill, but in terms of operational efficiency. I have
Okay.
also one operator example that they went out every single night to check if the buses were charging manually. And during the night, they had to go and check different rounds every single time. That's very much a problem that we can solve. And you can have all the operations on one screen and fix things remotely. So that's some savings I would definitely look into. That's easy to fix.
Okay. And then from an operational change perspective, without naming any names, can you share any examples from the field where an operator thought that their charging regime was fine, and then after deploying 10x started to notice different changes or maybe alerts, etc. Can you give any examples of that
Well, yes. For
without
example, we have
compromising anybody? Yeah,
yes, yes, yes.
yeah, yeah.
So we have seen that it's really easy on the operational side to catch a handshake that fails. We have had an operator having handshake disconnected 20, 30 times during the day. That's something they were able to avoid by having a charge management system like 10x. We have mapped out smart charging possibilities at operators, so they were able to save on their setup because we could do some peak shaving, and we could help them start introducing the smart charging. I would say one of the most important thing is that you get peace of mind. You know that everything works, and you know that your fleet will be up and running in the morning, so you can sleep well. And particularly during those horrible events when the charging power goes down, there's all sort of trouble. 10x gives you the alarm beforehand, so you have time to adjust and time to make changes, because it doesn't really help if you're notified in the morning when the bus is supposed to go out that this doesn't work. You have to be notified significant time in advance. So as soon as the system recalculates and see that this doesn't work, it gives you a message, and that could be hours in advance.
Okay. And kind of we know, Caroline, that like in everything, we know that technology moves at a very fast rate of knots, and particularly the latest introductions and how fast AI is moving. And it's also difficult, I guess, for the bus OEMs and the charge management hardware OEMs to be as agile and adapt as quickly as maybe we can at 10x. But I'm right in saying that 10x complements the existing, even if it's a turnkey solution provider on software, and it offers more, because it seems a little bit unfair. And some of the feedback I get from operators is that, look, we're locked in, we can't do anything. But it seems unfair that an operator has to wait until the end of a contract to realize maybe savings of 20 or 30%. So I don't know if you've seen that if you come across that challenge in the Nordic or European markets.
Yeah, we have seen that before in European markets, definitely. That you're locked into a contract, you don't want to add any more costs to a different system. But then I would challenge that thinking a little bit, because sometimes it's not about adding the extra cost, it's about how much you can save. So you're not adding in cost, you're adding a potential saving for your system. And starting early, yes, you're still paying for the other contracts, but you can still save a lot more. So it makes sense to start. And 10x doesn't have to be, it can be a complementing system. So it doesn't have to be an either-if situation, either or.
Okay.
It can complement each other,
Okay.
definitely.
Okay. So I think, do we have any questions so far, Leon? I'm just conscious of time, and I'm just wondering if any questions that we can answer.
Yeah, no questions in the chat so far, but if anyone has one, now would be the time to post it. I'll keep an eye, Jim. If you want to carry on, I'll keep an eye on it
Yeah,
and then raise my hand if something comes in.
no worries, no worries. So Caroline, how does it work, and how does it get started? What's your advice to operators who want to get started with better charge management?
Well, I would start checking out my operations. How does it look like? How does my energy bill look like? How does our depot charging profile look like? And what opportunities exist there? Then on the operational side, go into the details. Do we have issues due to charging? Cancelled routes, delayed routes, any sort of problems with managing the depots? Because usually I see in the beginning we come in and then there's one person responsible for the depot and charging and everything. And then you have the another depot with one person responsible for that. And you could think more of centralized operations of managing different depots. You will still have people in the depot, of course, to help fix the problems, but you can have centralized monitoring of all of your depots, and then distribute tasks to make everyone more efficient because we all need more time to do different things.
Okay.
There's always
Brilliant.
a task. So figure out your setup and also in your fleet. Maybe do you have insight into the battery health of your vehicles? Maybe not very important in the beginning, but as fleets age, it's more and more important to have that insight. And
Okay.
then you can see maybe there's some options for charge management.
Okay. And then from the UK perspective, we can also help, and we've offered to a small number or a select number of bus operators and transport authorities that we'll actually analyze the data and we'll crunch the data and provide a report like a business case to show what your operation could look like by introducing 10x, and we're very confident that the ROI will stack up. We've seen savings of between 20 and 30%, when the charging and fleet regime is intelligently managed. So I'm just conscious of time, guys. So I don't know if you've any questions, Leona, or
No questions. You've done a fantastic job of explaining everything clearly.
okay, no problem. Well, just wanted to say, thank you very much for joining the first of our series of webinars. I hope you found it informative and helpful. We wanted to make it quite we didn't want to take up too much time, but look, the background to this is that we wanted to demonstrate, Tenix is a new entrant to the UK and Ireland market. We wanted to demonstrate that we've got experience, we've got a hardened and proven solution with 2,000 vehicles connected to the system today, not since 2018. We're a trusted partner. We're committed to develop and deliver industry-leading solutions. We look at all our relationships as a long-term partnership, so we're here for the full journey. Commercially, we think that this stacks up really well. The ROI is very strong. And just moving into the next webinar, which will be after the Easter break, which I guess we're all looking forward to. And that will be a case study with one of our, and a story by one of our Nordics' largest bus operators, who's had an electrification journey started back in 2017 and now runs a full electric fleet. So we'll have a guest speaker and we're going to share some lessons learned, practical tips on how they use their CMS and more. And look, please reach out to the team here at 10x if you want to explore how we can help you manage your EV, your full EV management, your vehicles and your charge management systems. And remember, don't be locked in, then the 10x sits on top. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Jim.